Hello, and welcome back to Brian's Hobbies. I know it's been a minute since I've put out a video, but I've put a couple extra irons in the fire, if you will, and I've got another model kit started, but that one's going to take more than a few hours to complete. And I've also started a CNC project that didn't start out as a CNC project, and I'll have more on that in a later video. If you follow the channel, you may have seen my first Gundam build, which was a really not the best experience, I must say, but I committed to giving it another try because I'm pretty sure the kit I picked out was just a bad kit for me. Not necessarily a bad kit, just not a good kit for me. I picked up a couple of Gundam kits from 1990 off of an auction site, not eBay. I wanted to continue my journey into the world of Gunpla kits, and I thought, what better way than to go back closer to the beginning and build a 32-year-old Gundam model. And it was every bit as interesting as I thought it would be. So the kit I picked in the anime universe in which it comes from, it is a prototype law enforcement anti-labor crime patrol labor that is operated by the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. In the universe this little guy comes from, he stands 8.32 meters tall, which is a little over 27 feet, and weighs 6.98 metric tons, or just over 15,000 pounds. As I'm looking at the sprues, I see there are two small colored ones, a blue one and a red one, which I believe if they were making this kit today, they would put all three colors on the same sprue, which is pretty unique. And I've not seen it with any other kit manufacturer so far. Other than that, the detail on the parts is excellent. You can tell at the time this mold was made, it had not been in use for very long. The kit comes with these rubber pieces, which of all the kits I've seen so far, this is pretty unique. In scale, it kind of reminds me of the canvas covers you see on the robot arms in automobile factories that they're using to paint the cars with. The directions were really clear as to what needed to be cut off and what needed to remain, so that was pretty simple. These are obviously for the legs. The holes I'm cutting out are the attachment points for to connect the legs and the torso, so we'll see how that works in a minute. First up are the shoulders. Each shoulder consists of 3 parts. 2 parts for the shoulder, and the black one, which is, if you were a person, it would be called a humerus. As I mentioned earlier, the detail on the parts is excellent and required very little cleanup, and that really speaks to the quality of the Bandai kits I've assembled so far, even this one that's 32 years old. And of course, the elbow comes next. The engineers that designed this kit have done a great job with the joints used to connect these parts together so that the character is posable. They kind of remind me of a U-joint, but I believe a more correct term for that would be called a double lap joint. I mean, it's pretty ingenious how they take a box of parts and turn it into a posable action figure. It was at this moment I ran into my first challenge. Trying to stick a larger plastic piece inside a smaller rubber piece was not working, and stick was the proper word for it, because it was not going to go, at least not without tearing the rubber. I didn't want to use any oil or any kind of lubricant because, I mean, you don't know how it's going to react with the soft rubber piece. I mean, it could dissolve it, and that would not look good. So I took a little inspiration from the medical industry and put a little talcum powder on the parts, and that really helped. I mean, it just slipped right together after that. I mean, once I stopped dropping it, that is. As I'm assembling the parts, I've discovered a very noticeable learning curve between one side of the model and the other. I mean, people and people-shaped robots are somewhat symmetrical, meaning that one side of the body is pretty much the same as the other side, except in a mirror image. So once I figure out how it's done once on one side, the second time on the other side is a breeze, and I think you'll notice that throughout the whole video. After cleaning up the talcum powder mess, we were able to move on to some of the armor parts. What you're about to see next is my continuing lesson in following directions. All the parts are clearly labeled and numbered, and the directions are very clear on as to where they go, and I still didn't get everything in the right place the first time. Well, you know, watch and see. Also clearly visible there is what I think I'm going to start calling it the symmetrical learning curve. I mean, once I figured out one side, the other side just went right together. When you construct arms, after the elbow comes the forearm, or in this case, the forearm and the wrist. Here, I like how they've integrated the outer shell into the structure of the arm, almost like an exoskeleton. In the Patlabor universe, these arms are capable of lifting 3.2 metric tons, or just over 7,000 pounds, and would be constructed of carbon fiber reinforced aluminum and steel. If you're interested, I found a YouTuber that does kind of a deep dive into the Patlabor or Patlabor universe, as they call it, and where it stood around 2017, and I found it quite interesting, and I'll put the link down in the description. Now, what would a police vehicle be without lights? In this case, the shoulder armor comes with 2 red light bars, one for each side, and here's a fun fact. All emergency vehicles in Japan use red lights. This includes the fire, ambulance, and the police. Here's that symmetrical learning curve again. Bandai's instructions, although very clear where each part goes, doesn't really give you a good order of operation. You kind of have to figure out for yourself in what order you need to use to assemble things. Well, it is, unless it's in Japanese somewhere on the instructions, which unfortunately I can't read. In fact, there's not a single word of English in the instructions anywhere, but Bandai does an excellent job with their drawings, so you know exactly where everything goes, if not so much how it goes. You'll see once I get the first one done, the second one takes just a moment to finish. It took me 3 or 4 tries though, but finally the shoulder came together, and that was about the time I realized the joint connector needed to be installed in the armor before attaching it to the shoulder. In fact, right there, that was the aha moment when the armor popped off the shoulder and I saw how easily it went right back on, and at that moment I knew exactly how to build the second one. Once the hands were installed, I'm starting to see a character emerge from these bits and pieces. As I'm cutting the parts off the sprue, I noticed that Bandai uses a large number of injection points for a lot of the parts. And from the limited models I build, I'm pretty certain this is one of the reasons that their kits are such high quality, because the engineering time and the tooling for injection molds is not cheap. Something as intricate and detailed as this kit could be $60,000 to $100,000 in today's money. Material costs have to be taken into account also. The polystyrene used to make these can, depending on the quality, be anywhere from around 80 cents to $2 a pound. And the designers and engineers are continuously looking for a balance between the overall volume of the molds and the fidelity to the parts they're trying to create. And if you're making tens of thousands of parts, that can add up quickly. I mean, you can see how well they achieve this by look at the amount of sprue left over when you're done with a model, and compared to the size of the model you built. Here I'm finishing up the upper leg section, also known as the thigh, and cutting out the supports for the torso and test fitting it just to see how it all fits together, and it looks pretty straightforward. The feet were pretty simple, even though I did put them together crooked at first. Here I'm installing the lower leg armor backwards and on the wrong leg. But once I figured out where the knee was, the rest of it went together pretty quick. Next came the chest armor and the mounting points for the rest of the body. I've already decided there will be more of these kits in my future, and I'm very curious to find out if they continued the method of creating the articulated joints. And so, you know, no spoilers, please. I'd like to figure this out for myself. When it came to assembling the head, I ran into some real problems here. I could not for the life of me get this thing to go together and stay put. It just fell apart every time I let go of it. For whatever reason, these pieces were not going together, and finally I just had to give in, and I got out the glue, and it felt like a little defeat in the overall build of the kit, but everything had been such high quality right to this point. But on closer inspection, you could see some of the attachments points in the mold had become deformed. I mean, that said, it was an excellent little kit, and I've had a lot of fun building it. And I've got one more of these from the 1990s, and I'm going to get to it at some point, but I think I'm going to hang on to it just for right now. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate you making it to the end of the video with me. I mean, it was kind of a long one. If you enjoyed building this kit with me, I'd really appreciate it if you would hit the like button on the video and even consider subscribing. I mean, I'm having a blast, not just building the kits, but creating and editing these videos and learning new and interesting things with each one. I did come across a couple of websites that were helpful to me in my research, and I'll list those below. And thank you again for watching. If you're interested, the next video is on the right, the playlist is on the left, and there's a subscribe button right there. And remember, making something and sharing it is its own reward. See you next time.